Don't let her. That cry stopped every engine on the road. Imagine a sunny afternoon, a wedding about to start. Then a little boy runs out screaming for help. The sun was sinking low over a small American town, the kind with one main street, an old white church, and folks dressed in their Sunday best. The bells were ringing for a wedding. It was supposed to be a happy day. But then came the sound no one expected. A little boy about 9 years old, thin with a tear-streaked face, ran into the road waving his arms. His shirt was wrinkled, his shoes untied. Behind him, the church doors were open and laughter spilled out. He shouted, his voice breaking, "Please don't let her marry him." Every biker hit the brakes. Engines rumbled to silence. Dust hung in the air. 70 men in black leather and steel boots turned toward the boy who'd just stepped between them and the road. For a second, no one said a word. Then Red, the oldest of the group, pulled off his helmet. His beard was gray, his eyes sharp. He'd seen a lot in his life, but never a kid standing in front of roaring motorcycles, crying for help. "Kid," Red said gently, "what did you just say?" And the boy clutched a photo to his chest. His hands shook so badly the paper bent. "She's my mom," he whispered. "She's marrying a man who hurts her." The men froze. A single heartbeat passed and then another. The kid's words hit harder than any punch. "She said it was an accident." He went on, voice trembling, "But it wasn't. He gets angry. He hit her. And nobody believes me." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Everybody thinks he's some big shot. A rich man who helps people, but he's not. He's mean when nobody's looking." A biker named Bear muttered under his breath. "A rich man, huh?" And the boy nodded. "He's rich. Everyone says she's lucky, but she's not. Please don't let her marry him." The men exchanged looks. This wasn't the kind of thing you walk away from. Red crouched so he could look the boy in the eye. "What's your name, son?" "Fort Eli." "Okay, Eli." Red's voice softened. "You did the right thing coming here. You're brave." Eli swallowed hard. "You'll stop it. You'll make her see." Red didn't answer right away. He glanced at his brothers. Men who'd made their share of mistakes. Men who'd been judged for what they looked like instead of who they were. They knew what it was like to be the outcast, to be the one no one listened to. Finally, Red stood slow and sure. "We'll make sure she's safe." That was all Eli needed to hear. He let out a shaky breath, almost a sob. For once, someone believed him. The engines roared back to life. Eli climbed onto Red's Harley, holding tight to the photo. His small fingers gripped the leather seat as the convoy rolled down the street toward the white church on the hill. The sound of the bikes carried across town, deep, steady, like thunder. People peeked out from windows. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. Inside the church, the bride stood in front of a mirror. Veil trembling, hands shaking, she smiled. But her eyes looked tired, like a woman trying to believe a story she already knew was a lie. Outside, the man she was about to marry stood tall and proud in his gray suit. His smile was polished, practiced. He waved to guests and shook hands, the picture of confidence. No one there saw the shadow behind the charm. No one saw the anger he hid so well. The same man who'd once shouted at a poor waitress for spilling coffee. The same man who'd laughed when she cried, tossing a few dollars on the table like she was nothing. People had watched, embarrassed, and done nothing. He was too rich, too powerful to be challenged. But this time he'd picked the wrong people to fool. Because the roar of those motorcycles wasn't just noise. It was justice on two wheels rolling right toward him. What happens when 70 bikers crash a wedding to save a mom and her son? As the Harleys pulled up outside the church, heads turned. Conversation stopped. The groom's smile faded. Eli jumped down from the sidecar, clutching his photo. His small shoes hit the ground hard. His face was red from wind and tears. But his eyes were steady. He took one step forward and shouted, his voice echoing down the street. "Please don't let her marry him." The guests gasped. The priest froze and the man in the gray suit went pale. Inside, the bride turned toward the door. Her bouquet trembled in her hands as she saw her son standing there beside a line of bikers, the wind catching their jackets, the sun glinting off the chrome. The leader took off his helmet again, stepped forward and said calmly, "Ma'am, your boy's got something to tell you." You could feel the shift in the air, that strange, heavy stillness that comes right before truth breaks through. The guests leaned forward, whispering. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a stunt, a joke. But the bride knew better. One look at her son's face and she knew that wasn't the face of a child acting out. That was the face of a child begging for someone to listen before it was too late. Eli took another step forward. "He's not who you think he is," he said softly. "Please, Mom, don't." The man in the suit clenched his jaw, pretending to smile, but his hands balled into fists. His mask was slipping. Outside, the sun dipped behind the steeple, throwing long shadows across the road. The engines idled like a heartbeat. The bikers didn't say a word. They didn't have to. They stood there. 70 men who had seen too many lies, too much pain, giving a small boy the courage to speak the truth in front of the whole town. And in that moment, it didn't matter who was rich or poor, clean or covered in grease. It only mattered who had the guts to do what was right. The air was heavy after that. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Even the church bells seemed to pause as if the whole town was waiting to see what these bikers would do next. Eli stood there small but steady, the picture of his mother and that smiling man clutched in his hands. The edges were torn, the paper bent, but his grip didn't loosen. That photo was proof. The only thing that made sense in a world where adults didn't listen. Red watched the boy in silence. He'd been through a lot in his life. Bar fights, betrayals, time behind bars. But there was something about that kid that made his chest tighten. Maybe it was the courage, maybe it was the fear. Maybe it was how alone he looked. "Come on, kid," Red said quietly, laying a hand on his shoulder. "Let's talk somewhere else." They walked toward the bikes, the others following behind like a shadow. The church guests peeked from the windows, whispering. The groom's jaw clenched, but he didn't move. A few minutes later, at the gas station across the street, the engines went silent again. The men stood in a loose circle around Eli. He looked so small among them. Just a boy holding a photo in a plastic toy ring, his bottom lip trembling. Red knelt so he could see his face. "All right, son, start from the beginning. What makes you so sure this man's dangerous?" Eli's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. "Because I saw it, I heard it." His voice cracked. "He yells at her when nobody's there. He breaks things last week. He pushed her. She said she fell. But I know she didn't. She had a bruise here. He touched his arm gently and she told me not to talk about it." The men looked at each other, jaws tight, eyes darkening. "Where's your mom now?" Red asked. "In the back of the church. She doesn't know I left. I tried to tell my uncle, but he said I was just scared. Everyone says he's a good man. He has money, he bought her a house, and people think that means he's nice. But when he's mad," Eli's voice broke again, "he's not nice." Bear, the biggest of the group, kicked at the dirt. "I hate that. Money's got folks so blinded they can't tell good from evil." Doc, the quiet one with silver hair, took a long breath. Heard that story too many times. Eli rubbed his eyes with his sleeve. He told her I was lying, that I make things up to get attention. She believed him. That last sentence hit like a hammer. You could almost feel it ripple through the men. That awful sting of being dismissed when you're telling the truth. Red nodded slowly. "Sometimes people don't want to see what's right in front of them." "Eli, but that doesn't mean you're wrong." The boy looked up at him desperate. "You'll stop her, right? Before it's too late." Red stared past him toward the church steeple shining in the sun. "If nobody else will, we will." Those words weren't said. Loud. They didn't need to be. The group fell quiet again, each man lost in his own thoughts. Bear leaned close to Red. "You sure about this?" We step into a wedding, we make enemies." Red's eyes stayed on the horizon. "You want to walk away knowing we could have stopped something bad?" Bear didn't answer. None of them did. The truth was, every man there knew what it felt like to lose someone because nobody stepped up. Twitch, the youngest, broke the silence. "We can't just barge in. We'll scare everyone. Maybe we stay outside. Watch first. If it looks wrong, we move." Doc nodded. "We can keep it peaceful. But if he touches her or that kid, I'm not standing still." Red rubbed his beard, thinking, "All right. Half of us outside, half inside. No noise, no chaos. We just make sure that woman gets a chance to see the truth before she says yes." Then a voice came from behind them. It was Blade checking his phone. "Boss, we got a problem. The groom's brother's a cop, and guess what? He's already called in a complaint. Says there's a bunch of bikers harassing the wedding." Red's eyes narrowed. "How the hell does he know already?" "Probably someone from the church texted him," Blade said. "They're calling us troublemakers." Bear cursed under his breath. "They'll paint us as the bad guys before we even roll in." Red looked at Eli again. The boy was staring at the ground, silent, scared he'd made things worse. Red crouched down again and tipped the boy's chin up with one finger. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Don't you worry about that. We've been called worse than troublemakers. What matters is what's right." Eli nodded, but his eyes shimmered. "He'll be mad when he sees you. He doesn't like people who tell him no." Red's tone darkened. "Then he's about to have a long day." The group chuckled under their breath. Not cruel, just that dry laugh men give before stepping into something heavy. Twitch folded up a map on the hood of his bike. "Okay, the church has 2 exits. We'll park a few bikes on each side. Nobody gets in or out without us seeing." Doc adjusted his jacket. "If the cops show up, we're calm, we talk first. No fists, no chaos, just truth." Bear looked at Red. "You really think we can pull this off without getting thrown in jail?" Red's mouth curved into a half smile. "I've done harder things with worse company." They all laughed softly, but it was a nervous kind of laughter, the kind that hides fear under loyalty. Then Eli spoke again, so quiet they almost missed it. "What if she doesn't believe me again?" Red turned back to him. "Then we'll stand there till she does." That simple promise hung in the air like thunder before a storm. The group began checking their bikes, tightening gloves, strapping on helmets. The sound of engines starting again filled the quiet street one by one, until the whole town could hear it. Across the road, the white chapel shimmered in the afternoon light. The guests inside were laughing, completely unaware of what was about to arrive. Eli climbed back into the sidecar. His small fingers gripped the seat, but his face had changed. He didn't look like a scared kid anymore. He looked ready. As the first bike rolled forward, Red's voice cut through the rumble. "Boys," he said, calm but strong, "let's go make sure nobody gets hurt today." And with that, the convoy moved. Engines roared like thunder, tires kicking up dust as they turned toward the chapel. People came out of nearby shops staring in disbelief. 70 motorcycles rolling through Main Street, sunlight flashing on chrome and leather. Behind them, the flag above the clubhouse fluttered in the wind, and for a split second the town looked like a movie, the kind where the heroes don't wear badges, just scars and purpose. Eli looked up at Red as they neared the church. "You think she'll see me this time?" Red gave a small nod. "Oh, she'll see you, and she'll see who he really is." The boy held the photo tighter, the paper trembling in his hand. This wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about pride. It was about a mother who'd forgotten what love was supposed to look like, and a son who remembered. And now 70 bikers were about to remind the whole town, too. The engines thundered down Main Street like a heartbeat that couldn't be ignored. People came out of diners, hardware stores, and front porches just to stare. They didn't know what was happening, only that something big was unfolding right in front of them. Dust rose behind the convoy. The sunlight hit the polished chrome and made it flash like fire. And in the middle of it all sat a 9-year-old boy named Eli, holding on tight to a photograph that meant everything. His mother's wedding was minutes away. Red rode in front, his face carved in focus. He'd led his brothers through storms, through fights, through funerals, but this was different. This wasn't about pride or payback. It was about a scared kid and a truth no one wanted to see. When they reached the small white chapel, the street was lined with cars, shiny ones, the kind you only see at fancy events. Guests laughed, posed for pictures, fixed their ties. They looked expensive, untouched by trouble. The Harleys slowed one by one until they came to a stop just outside the church fence. The rumble faded into a deep growl that seemed to shake the windows. Every head turned. The laughter died instantly. Red killed his engine and set his boots on the pavement. For a long moment no one spoke. The smell of gasoline and dust filled the air, cutting through the perfume and roses drifting from the open doors of the chapel. Inside, the organ played softly. Eli's small hand touched Red's arm. "That's him," he whispered. Red followed his gaze. The groom stood at the top of the steps. Perfect gray suit, gold watch, slick smile. He looked like a man who'd never been told no. And even from a distance, Red could feel the chill coming off him. The kind of chill that hides behind charm. The man's face twitched when he saw the boy. Just for a second, but it was enough. His smile faltered. Red's jaw tightened. "Stay here," he said. He walked forward slow and steady. The crowd parted like water. A few guests whispered. Someone pulled out a phone. The groom's voice came sharp, polished, full of irritation. "What's the meaning of this?" Red stopped at the bottom of the steps. "We're not here to ruin your big day, sir," he said calmly. "We just came to make sure it's not built on a lie." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The man's eyes darkened. "Who do you think you are?" Before Red could answer, Eli stepped forward from behind him, clutching the picture. His voice cracked as he said, "I'm her son." The church went silent. Every guest froze. Every whisper died. The bride turned, her veil fluttering as she tried to see through the doorway. The groom's jaw worked, his smile back in place. "But stiff, Eli, go home. You're embarrassing your mother." But Eli shook his head. "You heard her. I saw you." The words hung in the air like a lightning bolt. The groom's face hardened. "Enough." He started down the steps, but Red lifted a hand, calm and steady. "Best not touch the boy," he said. That was when the groom saw them all. 70 bikers standing quietly behind Red. Not one of them moved. Not one of them spoke. But the message was clear. The groom sneered. "This is ridiculous. I don't know what kind of circus you people think you're running. But this is private property." Red's voice was low even. "A wedding's public until vows are said. We're just here to make sure the lady's got all the facts before she gives her word." The guests exchanged uneasy looks. The air felt heavy, like a storm about to break. Inside the chapel, the bride stood frozen near the altar. The organist stopped playing. Her bouquet trembled in her hands. Through the open door, she saw her son standing there, small, shaking, but unafraid. And in that second, the memories she'd been trying to bury started crawling back. The shouting, the slammed doors, the bruises she'd covered with makeup. She'd told herself it was love, that it was stress, mistakes, bad timing, anything but what it really was. But now, seeing Eli's tear-streaked face and the row of bikers behind him, she knew she couldn't lie to herself anymore. The groom turned to her, his voice suddenly soft and sweet. "Honey, don't listen to him. He's confused. You know how kids get." But the softness in his tone didn't reach his eyes. It never did, and for the first time she saw it. The darkness she'd been excusing for months. Her fingers loosened. The bouquet slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. Eli saw it happen and took a step forward. "Mom," her voice trembled. "Eli, what are you doing here?" "I had to," he said. "He's lying to you," the groom snapped. "Enough, boy." Then before anyone could move, he reached out quick, harsh, and grabbed Eli's arm. The sound of the crowd gasping filled the churchyard. It wasn't a hard grab, but it was enough. Enough for everyone to see the mask crack. Enough for the truth to come out in one silent second. Red's voice came like gravel. "Let him go." The groom froze. His hand shook slightly as he released Eli. He tried to laugh, but the sound died halfway. Red stepped closer, voice calm but edged with steel. "You don't put your hands on a kid. Not today, not ever." Eli's mother rushed down the aisle, gathering her son in her arms. Tears filled her eyes as she turned toward the man she was about to marry. "You said you'd changed." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Someone from the crowd whispered, "He grabbed that boy like it was nothing." Another voice followed, "Did you see her arm? I look at those bruises." It spread fast. A wave of murmurs, anger, disbelief. Red didn't need to say another word. The truth was doing all the talking now. He stepped back, letting the silence do its work. Around him, the bikers stood like sentinels, still unblinking, letting justice breathe on its own. Eli held onto his mother's waist. His face pressed into her dress. "I told you, Mom," he said, voice breaking. "I told you." And for the first time, she whispered back, "I know, baby, I know." The groom's face flushed red. "You think you can ruin my life with some street trash and a kid's story?" He laughed bitterly. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Red looked at him calm as stone. "We know enough." The man turned, scanning the crowd like he expected someone to defend him. But no one did. Even the priest stood frozen, eyes wide, unsure what to say. And in that silence, something shifted. For years, that man had walked through this town with his money. His charm, his arrogance, untouchable. But right there, in front of the church he thought he owned, his whole image cracked apart like glass, all because one small boy refused to stay quiet. Red turned to Eli, resting a heavy hand on his shoulder. "You did good, kid, real good." Eli blinked up at him. "Is it over?" Red glanced toward the groom, who stood alone now. "No crowd, no smile, no mask, not yet," he said softly. But the truth's finally got a voice. And for the first time all day, everyone could hear it loud and clear. But when the truth finally lands, it doesn't just free people, it shakes everything around them. The crowd outside the small white church didn't know what to do. Some stood frozen, hands over their mouths. Others whispered to each other, not out of gossip, but disbelief. The man they'd all called a good neighbor, a generous businessman, now looked like a stranger no one wanted to be near. The bride, Eli's mother, stood in the middle of it all. Her arms still wrapped around her son. Her makeup had run down her cheeks. Her veil hung half-torn, and her lips trembled as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Red stepped back, giving her space. He wasn't there to humiliate her. He was there to make sure she saw what the world had been blind to. The other bikers stood quiet behind him. No shouting, no threats, just presence. Then Bear muttered, "What now, boss?" Red's eyes stayed on the groom. Now we see what kind of man he really is. The groom, still breathing hard, straightened his jacket and tried to laugh. "You people have no idea who I am. I'll ruin every one of you for this. You'll regret ever stepping foot here." He pointed a finger at Red, but his hand trembled. His voice didn't carry the power it once had. Just desperation. Red tilted his head, calm as ever. "You can't ruin men who've already survived their worst days." That line cut through the air. A few guests actually nodded almost unconsciously. The groom's brother, the police officer, finally arrived. His car pulling up with the siren briefly wailing before he turned it off. He stepped out, confused and cautious, hand resting near his holster. "What's going on here?" The groom moved fast. "Arrest them." They barged in. "Disrupted a private ceremony." "Hold on." The officer interrupted, scanning the scene. His eyes landed on Eli, on his mother, on the bruise peeking beneath the lace sleeve of her dress. "Is that true, ma'am?" he asked softly. Her voice was barely a whisper. He hurt me?" The crowd gasped again, the officer's jaw clenched. He looked between his brother and the woman. "You told me it was an accident." The groom's temper flared. "It was." She slipped. "Then why is the kid shaking like that?" The officer cut in. For a long, painful moment, no one spoke. Then the officer sighed, stepped forward and took his brother by the arm. "You're coming with me. We're going to have a talk downtown." "Are you kidding me?" the groom shouted, struggling. "You're going to take her word over mine, over your own brother's?" But the officer didn't answer. He just led him toward the car. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder now, not of judgment, but of realization. The kind that comes when people see clearly for the first time. Red turned away, letting the cops do their job. He didn't need to see more. He'd seen enough pain in that woman's eyes to last a lifetime. But just as he was about to walk back to his bike, the bride called out, "Wait!" And Red turned. She stepped toward him, holding Eli close. "You didn't even know us. Why would you do this?" He shrugged lightly. "Kid asked for help." That's all it took. Her eyes welled again. No one ever believed him, not even me. Red's voice softened. "You do now? That's what matters." She nodded, pulling Eli closer, whispering something only he could hear. The officer guided the groom into the car. Reporters had already begun to appear, cameras flashing. Microphones thrust forward. Someone yelled, "Did the Hells Angels just stop a wedding?" Red didn't answer. He didn't care about headlines. The bikers started their engines again, one by one. The sound rolling through the air like thunder breaking over the town. But before Red could mount his Harley, Bear spoke again. "You sure we're done here?" Red looked back toward the church. The priest was helping the bride steady herself. Eli stood beside her, still holding the wrinkled photograph, now torn in half. One piece with his mother's smile, the other with the man's face. Red gave a slow nod. "Yeah, we're done." But as they began to ride off, Red's thoughts drifted back to the gas station earlier when Eli had told his story. Back to the moment the boy said, "Nobody believes me." That sentence had hit Red harder than he expected because once upon a time he'd been that kid. To begging someone, anyone, to believe him. He could still remember his own mother's voice, bruised and tired, telling him everything was fine. He remembered the nights when it wasn't. Bear must have seen something in his face. "You okay, brother?" Red gave a small nod. "Yeah, just thinking." They rode in silence for a while, the town slowly shrinking behind them. Then Twitch broke the quiet. Man, that groom's face when the truth came out. I almost felt sorry for him. Red shot him a look. "Don't." "A man who raises a hand to a woman doesn't deserve pity," Doc, riding beside them, added softly. "Guess we all got reasons we can't stand seeing that kind of thing." "Yeah," Red murmured. "We do." By the time they reached the edge of town, the sun had dipped low. The wind was cooler now, the road open and quiet. They pulled over at an old diner, the kind with flickering neon lights and a single waitress who knew everyone's order by heart. Inside, the men sat down with steaming mugs of coffee. The radio hummed quietly in the background. No one spoke for a while. Finally, Bear leaned forward. "You think we did the right thing?" Red stared into his cup. "If that boy sleeps easier tonight, then yeah, we did the right thing." The others nodded. The weight in the room started to lift. But then the door opened. The small bell above it jingled, and Eli walked in holding his mother's hand. She'd changed out of the wedding dress and into jeans and a sweater. Her hair pulled back. She looked tired but free. Eli spotted the bikers and ran over, wrapping his arms around Red's waist. "You stayed," he said. Red smiled faintly. "Didn't plan to? But coffee's good here." The mother approached slowly. "They told me he's gone. They're keeping him." "Overnight." Red nodded. "That's good news. I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "You saved me." "You saved him." Red shook his head. "No, ma'am, he saved you. We just made sure everyone could hear him." She smiled through tears, brushing Eli's hair back. "He always said angels would come for us. I didn't think they'd ride Harleys." That made even the toughest men in the diner laugh. A low, warm sound that carried farther than thunder. Eli's mom bought their meal even when they refused. Before leaving, she turned and said softly, "If you ever need anything," Red nodded once, tipping his cup. "We'll hold you to that." As she and Eli walked out into the night, the bikers sat quietly again, each lost in thought. Doc finally said what everyone was thinking. "Funny, isn't it, how sometimes strangers see what family won't?" Red looked toward the window where Eli and his mother were walking under the streetlight, hand in hand. "Yeah," he said, "and how sometimes that's enough to change everything." But that night wasn't the end. It was just the start of what people in town would later call the day everything turned quiet. The next morning, Main Street looked normal again. The same bakery opened at 7. The same people walked their dogs, picked up their mail, and pretended yesterday was just a dream. But everyone who'd been at that wedding carried something they couldn't quite shake. The truth has a way of echoing long after the noise fades. Red and his crew were back at the old gas station, the one with the tin roof that creaked in the wind. The bikes were lined up out front, sunlight glinting off the metal. Nobody was laughing or telling stories that morning. Not yet. Bear leaned against his Harley, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "You think the news will twist it?" he asked quietly. "They always do," Doc said, lighting a cigarette. "They'll make us out like the villains or the heroes. Either way, they'll miss the point." Red sat on the step near the door, hands clasped loosely. "Doesn't matter what they say, the kid's safe, his mom's safe. That's enough." A breeze rolled through, lifting the smell of oil and old asphalt. Then Twitch walked up with his phone. "You seen this?" He turned the screen toward them. A shaky video was spreading online. Someone from the crowd had recorded everything. The bikes, the shout, the groom grabbing Eli, the silence that followed. The caption read, "Hell's Angels stopped a wedding and saved a life." Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Some were cheering, others were judging, but everyone was watching. Bear chuckled softly. "Guess we went viral." Red smirked, shaking his head. "Ain't that something? We stop a beating and the world acts like it's a miracle." Doc exhaled smoke through his nose. "That's because it is these days." They all went quiet again. Not because they regretted what they'd done, but because something about it hit deep. Red looked toward the highway, eyes narrowing against the sun. "You ever notice," he said, "how the world only remembers when bikers mess up, never when they show up?" The men nodded. They knew that feeling too well. Twitch kicked at a loose rock. "You think the kid will be okay?" "High school's going to be rough. Small towns don't forget fast." Red leaned back, his voice steady. "He'll be okay. He's got more courage in him than most grown men I've met. He just needed someone to remind him he wasn't crazy for telling the truth." The sound of an old truck broke the stillness. Everyone turned as a pickup rolled slowly into the lot. Eli's mom stepped out, the boy beside her. She carried a box in her arms. "Morning," she said softly. Red stood. "Morning, ma'am." "I brought something," she said, setting the box on the table. Inside were pastries, sandwiches, and a small note on top. "Thank you." Eli gave a shy wave. Mom said we should bring breakfast. Bear grinned. Now that's the kind of viral I can get behind. They ate together in the shade, the sound of the highway stretching out in the distance. It wasn't much, just quiet coffee, and the feeling that for once they'd done something that mattered. After they finished, Eli looked up at Red. My mom says we're moving. Red nodded. That's good. New start. She's going to work at the diner near the ocean. Eli continued. Said maybe I can surf. Surf, huh? Our bear chuckled. Just don't crash like we do. Eli smiled, small but real. She said the ocean makes her feel free. I don't think she's felt that way in a long time. Red's voice softened. Tell her that's what she deserves. The boy nodded again, then pulled something from his pocket. The torn photograph now taped back together. I kept it, he said, because I want to remember what almost happened. Red studied the picture for a long moment. Sometimes remembering is the hardest part, kid. But it's how we stay honest. Eli tucked the photo away and whispered, I'm not scared of him anymore. That's because you faced him. Red said, fear only wins when you run. The boy's mother watched the two of them quietly. She hadn't said much, but her eyes told the story. The kind of gratitude words can't carry. I don't know how to thank you, she said finally. What you did. No one else would have believed a kid like him. Red gave a half smile. We've all been the kid nobody believed. Ma'am, maybe that's why we listened. Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears were soft. Healing ones. Eli tugged at Red's sleeve. Do you think there are more people like him out there? Like the man who hurt her? Red looked out toward the horizon. Yeah, there are, too many. But there are also people like you. And when people like you speak up, the bad ones don't get to hide so easy anymore. The boy seemed to think about that for a long time, then smiled faintly. Maybe I'll get a bike someday. Red laughed. You get old enough, I'll teach you myself. Eli's mom laughed softly too, shaking her head. Please don't give him ideas. The sound of that laughter, light, unforced, alive, was the kind of music the bikers hadn't heard in a long time. After they left, Red stayed sitting for a while, staring at the empty road. The wind tugged at the flagpole above the station, making the fabric snap and flutter. Bear sat beside him. You think we'll ever stop finding trouble? Red smiled faintly. We don't find it. It finds us. They both laughed quietly. Then Doc came over, phone in hand again. You're not going to believe this, he said. Reporters are calling the church a scene of redemption. Even the local sheriff said we handled it better than half his deputies would have. Red raised an eyebrow. No kidding. Doc nodded. They're calling it the day the angels rode for a boy. The men looked at each other, a mix of disbelief and pride. Red shook his head, a faint grin spreading. We didn't ride for a headline. We rode for the truth. But deep down, he knew it meant something, not just to the town, but to all of them. For years, people had looked at them and only seen the patches. The scars, the noise, not the heart. Now, for once, they saw it all. That night, when the engines went quiet and the lights went out in the clubhouse, Red sat alone outside for a while. The moon hung low, painting silver on the parked Harleys. He thought about Eli's words. I'm not scared anymore. It wasn't just the boy he was thinking about now. It was himself. It was every person who'd ever been silenced. And for the first time in a long time, Red felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes and let the quiet roll over him, because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is show up. And in a town that had never seen 70 bikers roll in for justice, that silence afterward said more than any speech ever could. The next few days passed quietly, too quietly. People kept glancing toward the old gas station where Red and his crew gathered. Some waved now, others just stared. A few crossed the street when they saw them coming. Not out of fear anymore, but because they didn't know what to say. Gratitude felt strange when it was toward men the town used to whisper about the diner down the road. Conversations always found their way back to that wedding. You hear what happened? Someone would say, that rich guy wasn't who we thought he was. They say the biker saved her life. My cousin filmed it, can't stop watching it. Gives me chills every time. For once, the rumors weren't cruel. They were curious, respectful, even grateful. But not everyone liked it. On the 4th morning after the wedding, Red sat outside the station, tightening a loose chain on his Harley when a black SUV pulled up slow. The tinted window rolled down, and inside sat a man in a crisp gray suit, different from the groom, but carrying the same slick confidence that money gives. "Are you Red?" the man asked. Red didn't look up. "Depends who's asking." "Name's Dalton. I'm a lawyer representing Mr. Fields, the gentleman you and your group publicly humiliated." Red wiped his hands on a rag. "You mean the one who grabbed a kid at his own wedding?" Dalton's jaw tightened. "You trespassed, intimidated guests, and interfered in a private ceremony. My client intends to press charges." The bikers nearby started to rise, but Red lifted a hand. "Sit down," he said quietly. Then he stepped forward until his reflection filled the lawyer's shiny sunglasses. "I tell your client he can try whatever he wants. But before he files that paperwork, he should know the town's got about 20 videos of what really happened. You want to drag that into court? Be my guest." Dalton's lips pressed into a thin smile. "You think the law will side with you?" Red's voice stayed calm. "I think the truth already did." The man's smile faded. He rolled up the window, the SUV gliding away with quiet fury. Bear let out a low whistle. "You think he'll really sue?" "Probably," Red said, picking up his wrench again. Men like him can't stand losing control. But even as he spoke, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gotten involved." Red stared at it for a long moment before setting the phone down. He didn't tell the others. And not yet. That night the clubhouse was quieter than usual. No laughter, no music, just the soft hum of the neon sign outside. Doc flipped through channels on the old TV, stopping when a news report flashed on screen. It was about them. A local biker club intervenes in alleged domestic violence. Community split. The reporter stood in front of the same church, microphone in hand. Behind her, someone had left flowers and a note pinned to the fence. Doc turned the volume up. While many praised the group's actions as heroic, the reporter said, others question whether taking the law into their own hands sets a dangerous example. Bear groaned. "Here we go. They can't help it," Twitch muttered. "They need drama." Peace doesn't sell. Red leaned against the bar, arms crossed, watching in silence. The camera cut to an interview, the town sheriff standing beside his cruiser. "I can't condone citizens acting as law enforcement," the sheriff said. "But I will say this. Sometimes right and wrong aren't black and white. Those men may have done more good than harm that day." The screen faded to footage of Eli and his mom walking on the beach. The woman looked peaceful, sun on her face, her son laughing beside her. And for the first time that night, Red smiled. Doc switched the TV off. "Guess not all news is bad." Red nodded slowly. "No, some of it's real." But deep down, he couldn't shake that message. You shouldn't have gotten involved. Later, when everyone else had turned in, Red stayed outside, staring at the stars. The highway stretched ahead, black and endless. Somewhere out there, a man with too much pride and too little conscience was probably plotting revenge. He didn't care about himself, but he cared about Eli and his mom. They'd been through enough. A bear came out lighting a cigarette. "You think that message was from him?" Red didn't answer right away. "Doesn't matter. If it was, we'll handle it." "You always say that like it's easy," Bear muttered. Red's tone softened. "It's not easy. So it's just necessary." The night was long and heavy. The wind carried the faint hum of distant traffic. By morning, the crew was already on edge. 2 strangers had been spotted near the gas station before dawn, one taking pictures, another parked down the street too long. Twitch followed them for a few blocks, but they disappeared before he could get a license plate. "Feels like someone's watching us," he said. "They are," Red replied calmly. "But that's okay. We'll keep watching back." Despite the tension, they carried on. The world had seen them do something right for once, and that made some people angry, but it also made others brave. 2 days later, a woman in her 30s showed up at the station holding a folded piece of paper. Her hands shook as she spoke. I saw what you did for that little boy. My sister's in trouble. Her boyfriend hits her. The cops won't do anything." Red looked at her, listening carefully. "Where's she now?" "In a trailer out near the woods," the woman said. She won't leave. Says he'll find her. Red nodded slowly. What's your name? Claire. All right, Claire, he said. You did the right thing coming here. We'll make sure she's safe. Bear frowned. Boss, we just got out of one mess. Red cut him off gently. Then we'll do it smarter this time. The woman's eyes filled with tears. You don't even know her. Red's reply was quiet but firm. Don't have to. She's someone's sister, someone's daughter. That's enough. Doc sighed, grabbing his jacket. Guess we're not done showing up yet. They followed Claire out to the edge of town that afternoon. A lonely stretch of dirt road, pine trees swaying in the wind. The trailer sat crooked on its wheels, one window cracked, the paint peeling like dry skin. And it looked like a place where Hope had packed up and left a long time ago. Claire pointed nervously. He's inside, his truck's out back. Red turned to his men. Same deal as before. No violence unless it's the only way out. They approached quietly. Red knocked on the door, steady and polite. Sir, we just want to talk. There was silence inside. Then a voice, rough, angry, shouted, Get off my property. Bear muttered, Always the same song. Red stayed calm. We don't want trouble. We just came to help her pack. The door opened a crack. A man stepped out shirtless, wild-eyed, reeking of beer. He sneered. You the biker from the news? Red met his gaze. Yeah, and you're the reason we're still needed. For a second, nobody breathed. And then the man's expression changed. Not to fear, but recognition. You think you can scare me? Red didn't move. No, I think she deserves to walk away without getting hit again. That's all. The man's jaw clenched, but something in Red's tone, steady, unflinching, made him back up. He spat on the ground and muttered, Take her then. I don't care. Inside, Claire's sister was crying softly, stuffing a small bag with clothes. When she stepped out, she didn't look at her boyfriend. She just whispered, Thank you, and walked past him toward the truck. And as they drove her back to town, she said the same words Eli's mother had. Nobody ever shows up. Red looked at her through the mirror. Maybe they will now. The woman smiled weakly, and for the first time in a long while, hope rode with them down that road. But hope, Red knew, was a fragile thing. It had to be protected, especially in a town that wasn't used to seeing bikers act like guardians instead of outlaws. The next morning, headlines spread across the state. The photo on the front page showed a woman stepping out of a trailer, tear-streaked but free, with Red standing beside her. The caption read, The Angels Strike Again, Second Rescue in 1 week. It sounded almost like fiction, the kind of story that makes people click and shake their heads. But for those who lived it, it was real, raw, messy, and necessary. And at the gas station, the crew sat in a loose circle, newspapers scattered on the table. Bear grinned. Guess we're a movement now. Twitch laughed. Ain't that something? All it took was a scared kid and a broken wedding. Doc folded the paper neatly, his voice quieter, and 2 women who finally got to breathe again. Red leaned back in his chair, coffee steaming in his hands. It's not about headlines. It's about showing people what real men do when no one's watching. Outside, a few townsfolk drove by slowly, waving or honking in respect. It was small, but it meant everything. But peace never lasts long. That afternoon, Red's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number, same tone. You should have stayed out of it. Only this time the message came with a photo. His clubhouse, the door, a single bullet hole in the wall beside the window. He felt the anger rise, but he stayed calm. He showed it to Bear without saying a word. Bear's eyes darkened. That rich coward still trying to scare us. Let him try, Red said evenly. Fear only works when you stop showing up. Still, he called the sheriff. 10 minutes later, the cruiser,